So, Sigourney, at what point did you and Jim first discuss the idea of you playing an important role in The Way of Water and the subsequent Avatar sequels?
So in 2010, uh, Jim and I had lunch in Los Angeles, in part to discuss how one might create a character of a girl who is a young girl, who had some sort of relationship with Grace Augustine, who I played in the first one. And it was clear that she was very comfortable in the forest, felt more at home there than she did with, any kind of people's community. Was sort of a wild child. I didn't know anything about the boy character that Jim would create later, the human boy that becomes her best friend. But that is a wonderful addition. I was thrilled, excited, and somewhat terrified by the prospect.
How did he initially describe the character of Kiri, and what most intrigued you about the role?
I think that he described her, well, we talked about these ideas that became more rounded out, but I think that, she doesn't know her true identity. Nobody seems to. And that is a very unsettling aspect of her life. She's adopted, so that's another difficult part. So she's one of those people who's very secure in certain ways and kind of lost in other ways, which I think is true of a lot of people's adolescence. So I think that there's a great deal of honesty in that, and I'm just so impressed that Jim can write a character like Kiri who's so special, so gentle, and also so ferocious when she has to be.
Did you have any trepidation around the idea of playing a 14-year-old girl, and how did you prepare for something like that?
Well, of course, I felt he was entrusting me with a huge responsibility, and that he might decide he was crazy. But I knew I didn't want to play a 14-year-old. I wanted to be a 14-year-old, and I wanted to be Kiri, a specific 14-year-old. And for that, I had to sort of unearth my 14-year-old and start to weave them together. And I found, the voice from hanging out in some classes in a high school in New York. And so luckily I had the time, because we kept being postponed, that I could sort of build. And so I think there was a lot I could identify with, the love of nature and love of creatures. And, inadvertently I became that comfortable in the water, even though, what I remember in the water growing up was there were always these horseshoe crabs, which are like these really primitive looking things that were always like scuttling along. So there are more beautiful things in the water in Pandora, of course.
How would you characterize Kiri's relationship to the other children in the story?
Well, I think Jim's family, he had several children who were around these ages, and he wanted to bring their real reality of, the put downs and the sarcasm and all of that in our world of the children. And so I think he wrote them really beautifully. So you see us giving each other grief, but at the same time you see that we'll do anything for each other. And that's what a family is.
How did you find the experience of working with the younger cast? And was there a lot of mentoring happening on set?
Well, I loved working with the kids, and I was always grateful to them because they immediately accepted me as a 14-year-old. I think they all got a medal for that. And I was particularly close to Trinity, who played my little sister, because Kiri and Took are very close. And then, Jack Champion plays Spider, who's my best friend. But I would never directly mentor anyone. I think that it was if I mentor at all, because I've been in the business for so long, I come from the theater, so I was inadvertently mentored to be on time, to be prepared, to know my lines, to take it very seriously, still have fun, all those things. And so in that sense, I think I was a very stabilizing influence to be in that group. All the kids did great, and they're each such individuals, and they all have very strong parents. So I didn't ever feel, I think probably I'll continue to be good friends with Trinity, and I think we will stay in touch, and if she has any questions that I can be helpful with, I'll certainly, share with her.